If I had, if my 5-year-old daughter knew I was talking about creating unicorns, she would be most excited. I would be a lot cooler in her eyes than I probably am. I am fascinated, though, about the moment at which you realised your company had gone from just another startup to something a lot bigger. When was that moment, and how did you know you'd hit it?
Look, I'm not really sure there. I mean, I was quite two moments. One is, you know, in, I don't know, whatever it was, 2005, I paid off my very small mortgage on my little sort of terrace in Lilyfield, and that was a pretty big moment.
Exciting,
that it was
yeah.
like, all right, if it all falls apart, I have some bricks.
That's something.
I can sit here, you know, like I own this place now. So, that we've always said that was a big moment. I'm not sure if we still agree on the premise of the question that we're kind of done or we've reached some sort of point. So, I mean, every day is a fight in any of these companies.
So there's no, okay, that's really interesting. There's no actual moment. It's a day-by-day progression in looking constantly at what you can do to build the company and stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I think you have to, I mean, you know, growth and advancing the company, no pun intended, is baked into our DNA, right? So that it becomes a bit of a treadmill. There's not a lot of times where we stop and think, wow, you know, occasionally it happens, you get hit by certain moments where something happens and you think, wow, this is just a strange experience personally, but you know.
Because this kind of leads to the question I was just posing then. We've been talking a lot about startups, about innovation, but this idea of building a unicorn, a startup worth more than $1 billion, is there anything special to it? Anything magical to it, or not?
Oh, people like categories to put things in, right? So look, there's nothing magic about the number there necessarily. I think it's a sign of it was supposed to be a sign of a rare, successful company that was likely to go on and become a big company, right? Obviously, the funding flush and other things we've had in the last couple of years is kind of, we suddenly have 100 and, when the original post was written about unicorns, I think there was like 10, and now there's like 400 or something. And they've started disappearing, and we'll see what happens to them all. So, yeah, it's good to have categorizations for people.
Exactly. Makes for an interesting topic of discussion. When your business is fascinating, and we've seen extraordinary growth there, but I'm also fascinated by what you're looking at outside the business now as well. What you're investing in, what you're thinking about, what's pressing your buttons at the moment.
Sure. Oh, look, it's a pretty amazing time in Australia, to be honest.
Why is that?
There's a lot of exciting things going on to invest in and other things. We just did our quarterly wrap up, and I think the goal was $1 million a week, and it was more like $1.5 million a week last quarter. So invested into 80% Australian companies. So
you're investing that into Australian companies.
Yeah, just personally, and Australian VC funds and all sorts of other things, right? But there's just a lot of fantastic things out there in the Australian scene.
Give us a few of them. What are some of the ones that recently that you've really liked?
Well, I mean, it's a big spectrum, right? I'm a big investor in a company called Tyro, which is trying to become the next big Australian bank. This is an amazing story. It's 10, 12 years old now. It's about 300 people. We raised $100 million from some of the best overseas investors and funds earlier this year, but until that point, you know, they'd built a bank on $35 million in capital. And, you know, it's transacting billions of dollars a year, and it's a fairly unknown future Australian unicorn. It's halfway there, whatever the valuation was, half $1 billion. So I've been involved there 6, 7, 8 years now. And that's on the big end of town, right? There's 300 people looking at going to 1,000 people and continuing to grow there, all the way down to, you know, smaller companies. Invest in a company called dgraph, which builds the most scalable distributed graph database. So it shows we can build what would be called hard tech. It's pretty hard infrastructure tech. And I actually just invested in my first space company out of Adelaide, which is very exciting.
What's it doing?
So it's trying to put up a network of CubeSats around the world to build a global data network effectively. So think Iridium and those sorts of things, but at probably 2 orders of magnitude less in cost nowadays. And it's a couple of people at Adelaide doing some pretty amazing work in think about sending signals into the bush, right? You want internet in your cow paddock out in the middle of the Northern Territory or in a mine and something else. It's quite hard to get signals there, so they're trying to. There's a huge market there, potentially.
So it sounds to me like a lot of different categories there that you're into. And what are you looking for? Is it Obviously more than just the balance sheet.
Yeah, most of them don't have much of a balance sheet. I mean, it starts with people, right? It starts with the team. There's no doubt about that. You find special people. You find people who one of the criteria we use, I'm a heavy investor and proponent of Blackbird, which is a local venture capital company as well. And, one of their rules there is that do they find people who are going to go get this done? No matter how many brick walls they're just passionate about solving this problem or going after this area, and they have almost an insane and over-the-top ability, right? Think of people that climb Mount Everest. There's no sane reason to go and climb Mount Everest. There's no point to it. But you meet these people like, that guy's going to make it to the top. And those are the type of people you want to put your money behind.
Do we have a lot of them in Australia?
I think we do.
Enough?
Enough. I think we have a great quantity of them, right? They're highly educated. We have a great university system. It is interesting, as one of the guys on my investment team pointed out, a lot of them are actually immigrants. So we shouldn't just, if you look at, Tyro, Degraph, and Fleet, they all have at least one founder that's from overseas.
What does that tell you?
That we have a great lifestyle. We were able to attract people, and when they come, they hook up with local Australians and they create these companies, and then they're going to create local jobs, and that's going to spiral the industry forward. So it shouldn't just be about some sort of purely Australian angle to it, but it's great that the global community that moves around, we can attract these sort of talented people.
Because we've been posing this question today, and we've had a bit of a mixed view amongst the crowd here as to whether we are innovating or stagnating in Australia at the moment. You'd have a unique perspective on this. What do you reckon?
I think we're doing a lot.
We also had a not sure column, I should stress, given the pause there.
It depends on what you're comparing to, right? We're certainly producing some great companies. We're doing some great things at different levels. My worry is always that we're going to get to sort of the Olympics, but we're going to be like in the semi-finals and not make the finals, right? Like, we're just not running as fast as some of the other advanced companies are at moving their economies into technology service-driven businesses, which is effectively going to be every single business in the future, right? It doesn't matter whether you're making shoes or cars or whatever, right? Technology is going to be some major piece of that, and that requires a very unique, skilled workforce at a massive size. And so it's easy to point out startups and examples of success. If you zoom out, I think you have to say, okay, well, what percentage of GDP, what percentage of job growth? There's some other sort of higher level metrics to look at. My worry is that we're slowly slipping backwards on that side of things. But that doesn't mean
on the side of which side are we sliding backwards on?
I think we're sliding backwards compared to other advanced economies on how much of our economy is based on technology innovation.
Right.
We have a lot of very innovative people and companies and things happening.
Yep.
But if you had to say the scorecard, we're probably going from 10th to 11th, 11th to 12th. We're still slowly sliding backwards. Now the question is, if we were 15th or 20th in the world at that stuff, would that be okay? Look, it's better than being 100th.
What do you reckon is the answer to this? Because we've got a Prime Minister, as you would know, who talks a lot about innovation.
He used to.
Well, you're right.
He used to talk a lot about innovation.
But
very quiet topic in the election.
Well, there is a view that they got burnt a bit because people are scared of innovation, that they worry they're going to lose their jobs, and maybe he has stopped.
That's a good way to solve the problem. Stick your head in the sand. It's definitely not going to lose your job that way around. I think it's a problem. It's a problem because as a country we've been very successful. Again, this is my armchair pundit political commentary, but
Loving it.
I think we're not scared enough about the disruption that's potentially coming to our economy, right? So we don't have people saying, geez, I'm really afraid about where these jobs go, how this change happens. We've got to get ahead of that change. It's like, we'll just ignore it for a little while. It's a bit like climate change. It'll probably be okay. I don't know. Let's punt it a couple of years and see what happens. That's a very dangerous attitude to take to this sort of a technology change, because you can't play catch up in a lot of these games, right? It's a constant pace thing. So I agree. Again, armchair political punditry, I'd put it to the politicians to say it's their job to explain to the population why this is an important issue. I totally understand the person that's working and saying, I'm worried about my job being disrupted, right? But the answer to that is not, don't worry about it. It'll be okay, right? It's going to get sent to San Francisco or California or London or any of these other cities and countries that are really pushing hard at the technology change in their economy, right?
I guess, is it almost using fear of what we do if we don't change, if we don't disrupt, if we don't get on board?
You want it to be positively driven as well as fear driven, right? I'm not sure as an economy we have a lot of fear that we're going to be disrupted, right? We've been very successful for a long time, and in any group of people, it's very hard if you've been successful for a long time to have that drive to keep changing and moving forward. It's easy to be like, I think we'll be okay. And the reality is, look, we'll probably be okay, right? Again, if we go from 10th, 12th, wherever, different surveys put us somewhere around that 10 to 15 mark in the world. If we went to the 15 to 20 bracket, it's not like we're all going to be totally stuffed, but we'd love to be in the top 10.
Yeah, exactly. One thing is talking about it, convincing people that it's something we need to do. The other thing is doing something about it. As a country, I mean, when you talk about falling backwards on technology, are we getting it right at schools, at universities? Are we turning out the right skills that we need?
That's a hard question to answer. We have some amazing universities. They're definitely turning out some very, very talented people. The question is always, is that in enough volume, and do they have the right blend of skills, right? It's not just about having technology skills. It's having technology skills that have some domain expertise, or it's having domain expertise skills, right? We need to churn out doctors and lawyers and other people who also have technology skills, because the law is going to be heavily about technology, right? Medicine is going to be heavily about technology. So do we have the blend of skills across all those people, and are we churning people out in enough volume is one of the open questions. I forget the statistic, but it's like, I don't know, X thousand computer science graduates every year, and it's like 10X thousand jobs created in the technology industry in Australia, and that just doesn't compute, right? No pun intended. So I think that's an important thing. I think we're starting to see a lot more STEM and other things. You have a lot of people in the industry standing up and saying, we need this in high schools, we need this in curricula. It generally is happening outside of the strict governmental stack. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some amazing programs out there for coding in schools and things that are getting some traction.
What about international links here? And you're someone who's got a lot of experience in working abroad and at home, and seeing Australian expats abroad. And are we getting it right when it comes to helping Australians work internationally?
I think we're doing a really good job. I mean, we have a pretty sterling reputation in Silicon Valley. Like, I think we, if you had an abstract and someone said, I've got this Australian company and I've got this other international company, on average, we would win that. If they were the only two things you looked at about these two businesses, whether I'm going to take a meeting or have a chat with them or help them, whatever, we would win that battle a lot of the time. We have a very, very good reputation, and mainly spend my time in Silicon Valley, some parts of Europe, in terms of the companies, the quality of the entrepreneurs that we put out, the talent. So I think our reputation is very, very good on an international stage. Do we cycle enough people back, and do we have the pathways? That's hard. I'm not sure our reputation for Australia per se, to the previous conversation I was listening to from backstage, I think it's a very valid point, is we're not seen as a number one advanced economy, right? When we try to hire people and bring them down to Australia, they're often like, Atlassian's a great company. If it doesn't work out, where else can I go work?
So that hurts your business?
It definitely, absolutely, right? It's incredibly hard. The biggest, if there's one biggest thing that's very hard to solve, is if we want more unicorns, 100-person, 1,000-person growing technology firms, we have to solve how do we get experienced talent into the country that can help mentor the younger people we have coming through. We just don't have a bench of experienced talent, right? You go to every single 100-person startup that I know, they're all struggling with the exact same issue, right? Is how do I find experienced talent? How do I get it into the country? How do I convince them to come help? Like, I'm constantly on phone calls with random other companies to say, tell them about what Sydney's like, or why they should move staff here, or why this certain person should be hired here. That's one of the big challenges we have, and it's a multifaceted challenge. It's not a government should go solve this. It's the industry reputation. It's all sorts of different things.
Let me come back finally to your business, to Atlassian, and what the future holds for it. Where you're focused on, what you're looking at down the track.
I have to be really careful here. No forward-looking statements, etc.
Of course.
Getting used to that.
Indeed.
Like, we have a phenomenal opportunity, right? I mean, if you look at the big problems we're trying to tackle around, teamwork, our mission as a company is to unleash the potential of every team. We've picked by design on purpose. Teams are going to be around in 20 years' time. They're going to be running projects. They're going to be collaborating on content. They're going to be doing all sorts of things that we help them do to get more efficient as a unit of people. So the opportunity for us is massive as a company. We continue to try to take advantage of as much of that as we can.
And team, you keep stressing, and it is interesting because you're talking a lot about the the people working together being crucial to this. And of course, you and your co-founder have been a team, and it's quite rare, isn't it? With 15 years now.
Yep.
That you've, and I know you've spoken about this before, but tell us how you do it, how you still get on when you're working so closely together every day.
Pretty good mates. We've had a pretty good run. So I don't know. I mean, we're pretty reasonable people, both of us. I think we're pretty Australian, quote unquote, to stereotype in terms of that sort of attitude of what we have to do to keep going. We both have pretty thick skins and are pretty directly honest with each other, which I think is super helpful.
Yeah.
We're the first people to say when someone's messed something up. And we, shared life circumstances, shared vision of the future. We're both excited. We're constantly checking in with each other, right? Are we still excited to do this, right?
Like
how we want to step off the elevator and we're like, no, man, let's keep going.
How often are you back and forth with each other?
How often do we talk?
Or communicate?
Like every day.
Text
Yeah. I mean, we make a messaging product in HipChat that we use all the time, right? My phone's gone off 3 or 4 times during this interview. So on a constant, regular basis, right? Any good relationship, constant communication is obviously one of the planks of making it successful. Honesty, all the normal sorts of things.
And that's not going to be right for everyone, I suppose. But if you are wanting to work in a team, is that sort of, I guess, intimate partnership ability important?
Oh, look, teams are. I could go on for hours about this. Teams are incredibly difficult things, right? You get a lot of very, talented people into a room, and you say, right, we're all going to go do something. What do you need now? Well, you've got talent, you've got brains, you've got experience, you've got history. Well, now it's all about the interpersonal dynamics, communication, collaboration, shared sense of purpose, all these sorts of things that are just important to teams being successful, right? That's kind of what we do as a day job. I think it's incredibly important for entrepreneurs to have a co-founder if they can. It's not mandatory, but it certainly helps you be much more successful. It's a pretty lonely journey otherwise as well.
Well, exactly. You've got to enjoy it.
That's right. You've got high days and low days, and you want someone to share it with who's been there on the journey, right? Every day in the trenches. So.
Well, you've had a hell of a journey so far, Mike Cannon Brookes. I really appreciate you joining us today. It was a fascinating discussion. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thanks, man.
All right.